So these are my most wanted Santa Clara County species. For some reason, I can't catch up with kestrel, even though they're pretty common. Definitely going to make a point to catch up with golden eagle this year. I've had a few attempts of them at Sierra Vista, and I think it's just time of year. I got to go in winter and try again for them. Pileated woodpecker I almost caught up with at Sanborn. No, it was Castle Rock, Indian Rock area. There was actually a couple that bred there this year, but I didn't get any shots I liked, so I'll definitely be going back for them. So just a little about me. I grew up in Bangkok, Thailand, lived there for quite some time. This is a photo of me. I probably like age 10 there in a budgerigar cage. We had budgies and lovebirds and doves and finches and cockatiels and all sorts of pet birds. And I was pretty into that, breeding the budgies, taking care of the budgies. And I got into feeding backyard birds like red-whiskered bulbuls with bananas, and had some influence from birders in Thailand who would go to places and talk about the birds. And I got some binoculars, and I really got hooked pretty young in Thailand at places like Khao Yai or King Krachan. I got to see birds like minivets and spider hunters. Green magpie was probably kind of a spark bird for getting more into birding as opposed to raising birds in captivity. And hornbills and broadbills and sunbirds. There are just so many amazing, colorful birds that just really sparked my interest. I did not do any bird photography at the time. I was just interested in listing and identifying birds. So for professionally, I'm a senior data scientist, and that kind of, I feel like it probably impacts my approach to bird photography a lot, sort of applying the scientific method to, thinking about probabilities and odds and things like that. So um, in terms of like birder knowledge, that definitely informs my bird photography too, because I'm able to apply many years of watching birds and seeing their behavior and understanding their range and distribution. And I'm a pretty good ear birder too, so I can identify most species in the county by ear. And that really helps for me just to know what's around and what's in the area. Um, so I just thought I'd share some places I visited for birding and bird photography. Thailand, obviously, about 12 of the US states, mostly in California, a little bit in Ohio and Florida too. And traveled to Mexico to several places. I really liked some of the Nuevo Vallarta, Puerto Vallarta area. That was really interesting. And Costa Rica was interesting. Ecuador, I got to do 2 years in 2020 and 2021. Definitely, that was the highlight of anything I've ever done. It was a huge bucket list item, and I just couldn't say enough about Ecuador. It was just amazing. Um, Colombia and Portugal recently, and Panama planning to go this year. So I definitely enjoy these overseas trips for bird photography and just connecting with nature. So for photography, background and gear, first gear was a Canon 20D Tamron 300. So that's kind of the gear I was working with in 2011, and I remember shooting birds, and they'd just be a little dot in the screen, and never got any good shots. But it was good for identifying birds, and as a birder, that's kind of where I started. Progressed to Canon 60D and the 70 Mark II later, and up to a 400 millimeter lens. And actually, I would shoot that 1 to 400 with teleconverter. So I was sitting at about like 560, and I started being able to get pretty decent shots with that. Always being maybe a little short, and sitting at f8, but it was pretty good. And I started to get more interested in bird photography with that gear. I also did some other types of photography. So I have a little home studio and that I created in 2017. This is a picture of my daughter from her little home studio. I think she was probably like 3 years old. And so it's kind of thinking about photography from different perspectives, I think has been helpful for me. And I even experimented with like landscapes and mammal photography for a few years, but that really didn't spark my interest like birds. So did not stick with that. So after going on a birding trip to Ecuador in 2021, I went with a really good guide. He was a phenomenal ear birder. He could basically identify every bird in the country by ear, and he knew all the locations. I really That really got me interested in bird photography, and in terms of trying to do it a little bit better. So I bought a Canon 500 millimeter, the first generation, to kind of deal with some of the low light conditions in Ecuador. And even though it was really heavy and I didn't like carrying it, I really got hooked on just what that prime lens could do. So within a couple of years, I had sold all my DSLRs and upgraded to mirrorless. So now I'm working with the first generation R5, Canon R5, and I have a zoom lens and then a one prime lens. So that's my main equipment. For software, I also used to use like a cracked version of Photoshop that was, my primary editing tool. And eventually that expired, or I couldn't access it anymore. I finally decided I had to get serious with software if I wanted to actually do a decent job of sharing photos. So I ended up getting, I think it's like Lightroom Photoshop package where you pay, $10 a month or something, and I ended up adding some other little pieces like Topaz and DxO to deal with noise reduction. So I don't regret any of those purchases. I think they've been really helpful for me, to create like a nice workflow. Um, my bird photography philosophy and interests are listed here, along with a beautiful photo of a golden-tailed sapphire from Ecuador. I think it was in the rain too, some raindrops there. Um, so I'm definitely obsessed with like light and detail. I want to try to get a full frame shot every time, even though that never happens. But almost never happens. You're almost always going to crop a little bit. But I really love to get as many pixels as I can on the subject, and just obsess about like exactly the angles of the light that might show something interesting, whether it's front lit or backlit, or even side lit. I mean, I'm kind of interested in all of it, as long as I feel like the light is working for what I'm going after. I try to mess around with all of it. I really love birds on flowers, so hummingbirds are a favorite for my photography. If Rufous hummingbirds coming through, then I'm just like, I'm definitely going to be going for the Rufous hummingbirds at the expense of everything else. I just love the contrast, and love the challenge of those little guys moving around so quickly. Um, I focus a lot on backgrounds that kind of contrast and complement the subject. So if a bird has a certain color, then maybe I don't want the background to have that same exact color unless it's maybe like a little softer and duller. Or maybe I want it like if I'm shooting a blue jay that's or a bird that's blue, maybe I want an orange background because that's like on the complementary color spectrum. So those are kinds of things I think about, and also really trying to isolate the subject where I really don't want to have sticks and things in the background. I just want as little distracting elements as possible. So of course that doesn't happen that often, but that's the goal. But also I really like action shots and experimenting with different things. I do prefer natural scenes, but I have in the past enjoyed setups. They they take less work, and you can get a lot of shots in a very short amount of time. And just, I mean, the point is really just to show the bird, and have some interesting photographs to edit. At least that's what I like to do. So I'm not opposed to them, and I try to do that in an ethical way at like a natural setup where they're just feeding hummingbirds, and then you just kind of make use of that. And then for my edits, I would say I try to make the subject kind of stand out from the background. So sometimes I basically do two types of edits. I'll do sort of a creative edit where maybe I'll take some more liberties with the background, where I'll maybe change the hue a little bit, make it a little pinker, make it a little more desaturated, a little darker, or brighter, just something to kind of change the look and feel of the image, and this usually involves layer masking in Lightroom or Photoshop. Um, a lot of times, though, I would just do a very natural edit where I'm not layer masking, and I'm just going to be adjusting the image overall as a single layer, and just kind of a standard editing process. So maybe in the future I can talk about editing because I feel it's really interesting, and I'm always learning more, and I would love to share and also learn more on that topic. I think it's a big part of bird photography. So I thought I'd share some lessons from just like the last couple of years, personal lessons. One thing I learned was, of course, dream gear isn't everything. Having some of this great gear was really nice. I'm not going to say that having a 600 millimeter is not fantastic. It just is. You have so much more light compared to my other setup where I was shooting at f8, and I would have, now I have twice as much light, and it's just unbelievable. Um, but it still only counts for, I would say, a small, maybe 20, 50% of successful bird photography. I think things like skill and time and patience and creativity and being able to access great locations. I'm lucky that I'm able to travel. I'm lucky that most days I'm healthy. I sometimes get slammed with cold and flu viruses because I do have daughters, but when I'm healthy, I'm lucky that I'm able to get out there as much as I am. Um, and networking, with other great photographers in the area has helped me a lot too. And so sometimes I do find that bird photography can be challenging for me personally. The weight of the lens, it can be kind of difficult carrying that around sometimes. I don't have like the biggest build. Prime lenses still give me grief from time to time. And things like crawling on your stomach or staying still in one location as your limbs get all stiff and sore. Things like that, the natural elements. I tend to get kind of dirty, which I encourage people to do. Getting muddy and getting down and dirty, it allows you to get these low perspectives on the subjects, but it also comes with the cost of getting cold and smelling terrible for hours afterwards. So that's just some of the stuff that I didn't fully appreciate. Started taking it a little more seriously, going from like a birder who photographs birds to trying to get better quality images to share. So actually, one of the things I did to kind of help with bird photography was just doing like a little more exercise. So I really focus on my core so that I can like stand up and get down and go from standing to kneeling and standing to crawling or kneeling to crawling. This I found was actually one of the most challenging things. And to get better, I had to do that. I had to strengthen my back, to kind of walk long distances with heavy gear, and shoulder and arms was definitely a point of weakness for me. So cardio as well, really important for like general stamina and just being able to handle like a 2 hour or 3 hour. I know there's other photographers that like 2 or 3 hour. That's not very long, but for me that was really difficult. I can't shoot for more than like 2 or 3 hours without getting completely wiped out. So especially if I'm carrying like a prime lens and having to do like a lot of that physical stuff that comes with it. Um, I didn't appreciate until I shot like this bufflehead a couple years ago how waiting for 2 or 3 hours for ducks is physical. Like your legs when you're just kind of on the edge of a shoreline, just waiting and waiting and waiting for the ducks to kind of get used to you. Um, it just you're just constantly shifting in your position, and your quads are just like going to be fried the next day if you haven't done that recently. So I think this is important. So I just thought I'd share that. Um, top four factors for, I think this is kind of a recap for beginners, but for me, good light, I really focus on that. Top four factors for a great image. Good light is, I think, the number one. And you can do it any different way, whether it's like backlit, front lit, side lit. But I generally tend to shoot within a couple hours of sunrise or sunset, or on overcast days or like in full shade. The reason I do that is basically I just want the colors to look as good as possible. I don't want to have glare. I don't want to have harsh shadows. And I know good editing can kind of save that. You can go black and white. I generally don't really want to mess with editing in difficult light because I don't have that much time, and I don't do many black and whites. So that's generally when I shoot. I try to focus on the perspective to get as eye level with the subject as possible. I basically reject anything that's out of 45-degree angle. I really want to be completely eye level. I want the subject to be looking at me, have that eye shine. I mean, that's kind of basic, but it's important just to kind of remind yourself that sometimes that eye connection is so critical. And I definitely utilize like terrain a little bit. Sometimes if there's like a slope, then I can shoot on the slope so that I'm at the tops of the trees getting eye level with the subject. Um, I've talked about background a little bit and how important that is, to how I think about bird photography, really trying to isolate or complement the subject. And then I think the fourth thing that makes for a good photo, and that's the hardest thing, and I feel like 95% of my photos don't have engagement, but it's something that tells a story, whether it's like I shouldn't have put a nest here, but you know what I mean, like a baby being fed by the parents, or a bird in flight, or birds fighting or singing or something that that's just kind of draws the viewer in. So here's a photo. This was at Penitencia. No, actually, this was at Little Stack Natural Area. I was able to get isolation on a Rufous hummingbird male with a hummingbird sage, and there were actually a lot of hummingbird sages in that area, so getting isolation was difficult. I had to wait for it to come up to the top of one of the stalks, and fortunately, the Rufous is not as quick and shy as the black chin hummingbird, and so I was able to get repeated passes. And here I'm missing the gorget reflection, which one year I'll hopefully get, but I just like the flower. I think it really helps add to the bird. Um, so moving just to like what I call strategies and tips that I've learned recently. That some of them are maybe a little beginner, but I just thought I'd share some of the ones I found important. There's definitely too many to list. The first one is respect the subject and understand the observer effect, which is that
Yeah. Oh,
the
this is the bird.
yeah, that when we're in an area, we are having an impact on our subjects, and this applies to everybody. So let the subject kind of accept your presence. Don't chase the subject. I find that this is almost never productive, trying to chase the subject around. So that's one thing I've learned, is just to be real, sensitive of the subject and respect them and what they're doing, so that they can continue their normal behavior. And I don't really engage in like bumping of subjects. I think it disrupts the behavior, and I actually think it hurts my bird photography. So I really like to just immerse myself there, be as still as possible, and just let the action come to me. Put myself in a good position to, maybe nature will surprise you one day and something will come that you didn't expect. So, you know, that works for me. And then another aspect is predictive behavior, which I think most people know about. Looking for behaviors that are repeated that allow you to get in position for a shot. I think this is probably the number two thing after, respecting the subject. I think this is a focus for me. So, for example, when I come to an area and I have a subject, oftentimes I just spend the first hour or half hour looking at what the subject is doing and seeing where he goes, what perches he hits. Is he hitting the same perch. Songbirds hit the same perch on a singing circuit sometimes when it's in the spring. And so you can kind of figure out, oh, he likes to go there, or there's a section there where many males go and kind of their singing circuits intersect. So I might be in a position to get some shots of them as they hit that area. Um, or like ducks that flap their wings after a bath. That's something that you can plan for. You see a bird taking a bath, and the wing flap's coming. Or ducks often take off when other birds take off. So if you're shooting a duck and a couple birds take off, that duck is likely to take off. So you can get a takeoff shot. Or like sometimes flycatchers or other passerines, they come down to the ground to catch the food, and that's like a good opportunity for a bird in flight because you know that once they catch that food, they're going to take off. So actually, that first shot of the western bluebird at the introductory slide that was caught that way. This bluebird just going down to catch insects off the ground, and I just followed it around and got a takeoff shot. This is another example. Here is this redhead coming to the same spot for its morning bath. I didn't figure this out until maybe day 3. This was at Oka Ponds. But I did notice that, hey, he would come there around 9 o'clock and take a little bath. So all I had to do was kind of wait for him. And then once he came take the bath, I kind of inched in, crawled in. He had already kind of gotten used to me. And I was real low to the water level. So you can see that just how low I am. That helps with the perspective. And it also makes me not appear much of a threat to him. Um, and this I would consider a creative edit because the background is not that color. I think it was a lot greener and yellow, and I took a lot of those greens out. But otherwise, I feel I pretty much left the bird alone and just kind of altered the background colors to sort of complement the subject. So I would call that a creative edit. Uh, Another thing I like to do is kind of increase my odds as much as possible, give myself a good chance for success using high frame rates, keeping the shutter speed high to kind of avoid the unintentional motion blur. I do that a lot. Um, I also will do repeated visits if I find a subject that I think, oh, he's hanging out there. I'll go a few times in the morning to try to kind of get him a little less, so he's not too sensitive to me. He kind of accepts my presence. I'm not trying to disturb him, but I am trying to get him just to, not view me as a threat. And that actually can take as little as 10 minutes sometimes with some subjects and as much as several hours for others. So it really varies. Um, and then I also like to use locational abundance to increase my chances. So for instance, if Rufus, sorry, this I have some daughters in the background. Uh, for Rufus hummingbirds, I will time when I shoot them exactly to their peak. So they come the second or third week of, I might be getting ahead of myself, but they come the second or third week of April. And there's sort of a peak, and you can kind of check your spot where you're hoping to catch them. And sometimes 2 or 3 males will be around, and then boom, that's when then I'll go. Okay, they're going to be there for a couple days, and then so locational abundance I think is really helps increase your odds that you're going to catch the bird or the subject. So yeah, this is just an example from the duck Palo Alto. I was there shooting ducks, and then the shoveler, was sitting there, and other ducks left, and I had a inkling that he might take off, and sure enough, he did. So I got that action shot. Um, uh, Also, moving on to, I guess, timing. Um, just thinking about like what is the best time of the year to capture the image you want to make. So if you have a subject, here's this example was of a quail, California quail, and I wish I could have had the male here, but I was lucky to get the female with the 2 chicks. This was an image I really wanted to make, and I still want to make more of this image. I really wanted the quail family together on the same perch. I kind of elevated off the ground was a dream. Um, so I kind of like thought, okay, well, what do I need to, make this happen? So I had to know exactly when the chicks were going to be about this size. And I knew that if they were small, they would be following their parents around very closely. So if the mom came up, sometimes, the chicks would come up. And I figured that out from kind of watching them and observing their behavior and just kind of knowing from being a birder how the quail chicks behaved. I also knew that like the adult male would go and he would broadcast or kind of do his calls, and he would also be the lookout. And so if I would know exactly where he would be, and I kind of bet on the fact that if he was up there, maybe the mom would come and then the chicks would follow, and that's what happened. So timing, I think, is really critical. um, Knowing the exact timing of the year for the breeders and when the breeders are singing at their peak, they're real defensive on their territory, and you can really take advantage of that because they are active and they are they're going to hit their perches, and they're going to come and they're sing. um, Also, thinking about like abundance is really critical. Seasonal food eruptions on the salt ponds can bring a lot of action, so I try to get that timing correct, and sometimes I do. um, oh yeah, one other thing about this one with the quail, it's actually a really small window. I tried again this year and I missed it by 2 weeks. And by the time I got back to Alum Rock to try to get more images of this, the chicks were already 3 times this size. I missed it by 2 weeks. So timing was so critical. I was actually traveling at the time, so I couldn't get the timing right. Here's another example of timing, which is the peak window for migrants. For Get your timing right. Here's a Rufous hummingbird on Pride of Madeira. So I'll go there. I've done this a couple years now, and I kind of got it down to an art. So I'll just check every couple of days from the second and third week of April, and if the hummingbirds um, are there, then I know, okay, there's probably going to be a couple for a couple of days, and then I'll just set up for them. Um, Thought I'd share about scouting locations. I really like scouting locations. I feel like it gives you lots of opportunities to find hotspots of activity and unexpected targets. So it's a little bit like basically I'm just applying birding to photography in that sense. So I still get to do some birding. I use eBird sometimes still, but it also allows me to do some opportunistic photography and uh, and checking like my let's say 10-15 locations gets allows me to have really sensitive and localized knowledge about what species are there, and what to look for at different times of year. It also allows me to check the conditions, what kinds of backgrounds might be available at this pond and or this lake, and what kinds, where's the light coming from, and do I have to deal with a canyon that's creating shadows or trees that have dappled light, or what are the trail conditions? Do I have to wear insect repellent? It just runs the gamut of like different things that you have to think about. But I just like scouting locations. I think it varies the look, by varying the location, I don't get bored. And I use the zoom lenses to kind of minimize the weight oftentimes when I'm scouting. Um, Even though ultimately I usually go back with the prime lens to try to, get a real nice detailed good shot. So here's a total look scouting at Alum Rock, and I found this pygmy owl that just passed by. It had attacked acorn woodpecker. It's like one of the only times I've seen that happen. And he landed on this pretty nice branch. It's a little big, but um, yeah, it was fun. It was great to just have that opportunity. I don't think have many opportunities for pygmy owl, and oftentimes when I'm in areas in the Santa Cruz Mountains that have pygmy owls, I don't get opportunities like this. So that's cool. Um, Another thing that um, I find is really, I guess it's really critical. It's kind of strategy and planning your shoot and saying like, okay, what is my target and what do I need to do to be successful to get to nail this subject that I'm after. If you don't plan that, then the little things add up and result in failure is what I find. And sometimes it's as simple as just like, okay, charge my batteries, make sure I have multiple cards because I can fill cards really quick with these mirrorless ones that shoot like 20 frames a second. And just making sure that like if I need certain equipment that I have it And then I'll make certain decisions based on the subject. Do I want to focus on, do I need a lot of focal length? Do I need support or not? Do I need any kind of camouflage? Is a zoom lens better than a prime lens? And then some of the stuff, tactics. I just thought I'd share that for shy species. Um, Again, I for shy species, I tend to get in position and not chase them around. And I'll do this little thing where I'll look away from the subject and wait for normal behavior to resume. As sometimes birds, they just know when you're looking at them, when you're pointing a lens at them. So, like if I'm approaching, I might approach from the side and not do a direct frontal approach, which then I point a lens directly at them. That almost always results in failure. So I'll do like a side approach, keep the lens pointed to the side, not point it directly at them, wait for 5 minutes or however long I think I need, and then slowly, 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 slowly point the lens towards them. That's one tactic that I use for shyer species. I'll use support a lot to minimize my movement. So like if it's a kingfisher, I know I don't want to be bringing that lens up and down. And if it's a heavy lens, you definitely don't want to be bringing it up and down. So I'll put it on a support like a tripod or yeah, typically a tripod. I don't shoot much with the monopod. Um, I'll keep my feet as still as possible and just avoid head movements. Wait for the bird to settle, um, and that's kind of, yeah. I think I learned a lot that planning for a subject, if you can get the little details right and the behavior and stuff, that can work pretty well. Um, Another thing I like to do is shoot a location. I really just like sometimes immersing myself in a location and saying, well, I don't know what's going to come, but something will come. And so I'll pick a good location with good backgrounds, good light, get there at the right time of day. Uh, some advantages of this is like you're not going to spook your subject because you're just hunkered down, you're just sitting there. And they're not going to see you as a threat because you're lying down or you're sitting down or something. It's really good for ponds and lakes and beaches, and you often give yourself like lots of targets, which really increases your chances. You're not just going after one bird; you could shoot anything that comes by. I did that the other day at Foster City Shell Bar, and it was just unbelievable. There were so many shorebirds over there. Um, some of the disadvantages of that, um, of shooting a location, is that can take a bit of patience sometimes, especially if there's not a lot of subjects around, or the subjects are shy like ducks and they might take a while to return once you get in place, unless you get there before sunrise, which I tend not to be able to do. And then you also kind of get the numbness and the soreness from staying still, or in the winter that can be really tough. But here's an example of a ringneck duck male that he didn't know if I was there. This is like actually like a full frame shot of a ringneck duck male, and they're pretty shy, or they can be shy. And he didn't really know I was there because I had just a couple little stakes in the ground with like some netting, and I was under like a little camo blanket. And most ducks know when you're there, but this guy was a little confused by it. And so I just shot that location all for a couple hours and had some success. Um, this is another note on stalking shy species, which is that some stalks take a long time and they don't result in success. Um, for a kingfisher, you can either wait at a location and hope they come. Your chances, is, I would say, of being successful with that is very low for this subject. They have too many places they can catch fish from. There might be a pond where that works, but the ponds that I tend to shoot them on, it doesn't work because they just go to another perch and they don't come back to the one that you're next to. So what I have found is if you just kind of slowly, slowly, slowly work in to them on a tripod and you're not making much movement, and you kind of watch their behavior and wait for them to settle down and not look at you and go back to hunting, that's when you kind of inch closer, inch closer, inch closer. And then also putting it on like some 2x teleconverter or something so that you don't have to get too close. That helps a lot too. Um, uh, One other thing I like is pre-focus for subjects that are going to return to a spot. I think it's really great with mirrorless that you can, like, you can pre-focus on something And once predictive behavior is established, you know where he's kind of roughly the position the bird's going to go to. So I'll use this like with humming. I'll think, okay, he's probably going to go to this stalk or this area, so I'm going to pre-focus on that. And then when he comes in, I'm not hunting for the subject because it's just a blur. I we can basically see him there in the viewfinder, and I can lock focus real quick. Um, I think it's really important for mirrorless bodies, which always seem to grab the background of that you're pre-focused, and then you can just smash the eye tracker or some zonal thing, zonal focus mode, and get right on it. It's also seems to help a lot with like when the perch is really thin or small. In those cases, what I'll do is I'll like manual focus, make use of the focus recall on the lens if it's equipped. And that way, when the bird comes in the frame, I'm already on the right focal plane. I can get the subject. So that actually, I did use focus recall on this shot, so that's why I shared it. This was a Western flycatcher at Penitencia Creek, and I used predictive behavior for it because I saw, okay, he was hunting insects over the stream. Must have been some good cloud of insects there. So I got in position. Of course, he moved away, but immediately came back after a couple minutes and saw I wasn't a threat. Um, and I used the focus recall so that because there was too many twigs that he could have landed on, but I got the general area right, and I would have never grabbed the twig unless I could like basically see where he was in the viewfinder already and grab him. So this leads me to back button autofocus, which I love, and I can't believe I went so long before I set up my camera to do back button autofocus. I started doing it maybe after I got the Canon R5 3 or 4 years ago, I think it was. And I currently use three back buttons for autofocusing, and it really increases the reaction time because I don't have to switch between autofocus points or autofocus modes. Um, and it also allows me to have quick reaction between birds in flight and a static subject. So the way I set it up is I like to have eye tracking for one button. It's always there. That just makes things easy. And then for users, I have one that's basically user selected. So if I think I'm gonna maybe have a bird in flight or something, I might leave it on a zone. Sometimes I'll go to like a small center cluster, and then I always have one for spot focus. And that way I can always grab a static subject if I need. So I'm pretty much set up for birds in flight, and I'm always set up for a static subject with my focusing just right there on the camera. Um, so this is just a green heron. I think it's not a juvenile, it's an immature. I think I shot this at Santa Clara Valley Water District, and this was when I first got like the prime. I was just kind of learning, but interestingly, the sack shot actually came out good, and I'm still happy with it a couple years later because I felt like I remember working to get the background just right and the light just right. So I kept working the angles so that I got a background that was, I guess, complementary in this case because it's kind of greenish and brownish, but it's not exactly the same green brown as the bird. And I think the other options of the background I had were limited. So um, I just thought I'd share that because I just love green herons, and yeah. I think that's all I had. I don't know. Do we do Q&A, Shri?
Perfect. Yeah, yes, actually, thank you so much for that. Extremely interesting points.
Mhm.
And I'm just going to open this up. So if anybody has a question, please unmute yourself and you can go ahead and ask. I think there was maybe a comment or two. Oh, okay, yeah, sorry, Stig. I'm just noticing this. You had a comment about capture one.
Mm.
All I said was it's the bomb.
Yeah,
Yeah. I I got Capture One a while back because I didn't want to pay recurring costs for Photoshop, and I thought I could naively thought I could do everything in Capture One, but of course it's not very good at masking and things like that. So
mm,
I still have the Capture One
Oh, it
license.
is now.
Yeah, it's gotten better probably. Um, I still have Capture One in my workflow. And it's sort of like I like to have a session, and that's how I kind of organize my workflow is with the Capture One session.
Yep.
That's cool though. I don't know how common Capture One is with bird photographers.
Yeah, and their masking abilities have, or layers as they call it, have gotten so much more powerful.
Yeah.
This is not DxO, is it?
No, it's more
It's a
it's
different.
It's a
more
dam. It's a media manager, but it also is a full workflow tool, and you can import and export to other tools.
correct.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
then their in-house layering or in-house edit options have gotten stronger and stronger with every release.
It tends to be used by like professionals that are doing a shoot and then they like want to have real time mass batch processing of their files, and there's various. I don't know that much about how it ends up being used by professionals, but it's commonly used over other ones. But I wouldn't think of it as like Lightroom and Photoshop allow you to do some very fine endpoint editing
Yeah,
that.
it does now too.
Mhm.
It's on par with like Lightroom. And in
Hmm.
some cases it's a little stronger. In some cases a little weaker.
Okay. Yeah, I have the older version, so that would it do something like subject selection? Like,
Yes.
yeah, okay. Wow. Yeah, my version's probably like 4 or 5 years old, so I use Lightroom and Photoshop generally for all the subject selection and that type of thing, or for cloning. Does Capture One do cloning and things like that,
Yes.
like spot removal? I mean, no, it does
Yes.
spot removal. Okay.
But I love it too because even the in-house sharpening is almost as good as some of the Topaz options. Not all the Topaz options, but some.
Hmm.
Oh, wow. So, Chris, if I know it's difficult question to answer, but do you have a favorite spot? I know these are, I mean, a favorite spot that you like to keep going back, because now you've located a like a bird that you probably know the backgrounds and things like that. But do you have a spot that you like to go back all the time?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, I guess the ones I tend to shoot a lot at are driven by what I can get to within 15 minutes, before work.
Mhm. Okay.
Um, so um, I guess of that limited selection, Ed Levin's always been good. Um, I do like some parts where you can just walk the trails along the creek in the morning. There aren't too many people there. Penn Creek sometimes can be good in the winter, especially when the waterfowl come in. I've had like hooded mergansers and some good, just common ducks, but yeah, good duck selection. And Okapons in the winter is really good. I like some of those, like that one most south pond um, has often had good duck selection, or like at least birds flying by, that you can do flight stuff. Oh, I can't say enough about like Palo Alto duck pond in that area for flight action. The light's pretty good. I would say the backgrounds are really problematic there though, because there's a lot of like man-made towers
Mm.
um, and objects that you're going to get in the background, but you are going to get a lot of subjects flying by. I often just like in October, November, I think Palo Alto Duck Pond. I want Bonaparte's gulls. I want ducks in flight. I want shorebirds in flight. Like that's some of my go-to area.
Gotcha. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I recently learned that afternoons at Foster City Shell Bar are pretty good for the skimmers.
Yeah.
And instead of
Yep.
getting backlit, you can get more frontlit shots of the skimmers. So that's an area that I think has a lot of potential for birds in flight or skimmer action and things like that. I don't know what I feel like if one shot I've always wanted is like a skimmer catching a fish or like skimming right on the surface of the water, like just eye level front on.
Yep.
And I feel like if you want to do that, you'd have to have like waders or some
Yeah, the
boots or something. I don't know if that's allowed, but I see fishermen out there. So
Foster City shell bar, it depends on the tide, right? I think
yes,
you have to hit it at the right tide.
you have to hit the tide, right? Yeah, I
Yeah.
think a high tide is good.
Yeah.
That tends to bring all the shorebirds in. So yeah.
We got lucky this year. There are close to 200 skimmers this season. Which
Yeah, yeah.
surprised me. Yeah.
I went this weekend and I was shocked by the number of skimmers. I mean, when you have numbers like that, you're almost um it's almost bad. Like I was trying to get one or two skimmers in the frame and I just had a mess of wings and
Yep.
actually a lot of it was a problem because I just had so many birds in the frame and I couldn't compose anything. You know,
Yep.
it's all about like composition and which the subjects all have to have their wings opened in the line the same way or it looks junky. They can't be crossing up each other. So I found that that was really challenging, but it's a good problem to have.
One thing this year that I really enjoyed at Shell Bar, which I'm grateful actually is coming back to life. The mornings you probably only have a good 20 minutes, maybe 10 minutes before sunrise and maybe 10 minutes after. But then if you are lucky, you get to see skimmers in golden light. So I've been highly recommending that to people who are close by and you can do this. Really
Yeah,
good shots, actually. Yeah.
really good. Yeah. Yeah. And in the morning you can get like backlit,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Beautiful.
amazing, just, beautiful light coming as the sun comes up from like 6
Yep.
30 right now. This time of year would be like, yeah, I would get there early so that you don't disturb them and you're already in position by like 6:30
Right.
through like 8:30. It's going to be just absolutely perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. Good spot. Excellent. Eye level. I know this is something that you've been presenting. You're actually talking about this even during the walk that we had, and also the photographs you show.
Mhm.
So you have clothes that are suitable for this, I'm guessing. I mean, do you wear anything special, shoes wise or clothes wise, or what do you suggest?
For clothes?
Yeah, because I mean, I'm
Mm.
guessing you're going to get wet and dirty.
Right. I wish I had more and better options, but I do have waders. I
Mm.
have, tall boots, so I can stomp around in the mud if I need to. I have some waterproof pants. Um, and then in terms of clothing, I tend to dress just pretty green, pretty much browns and greens, no blues and reds. I don't know if it matters, but that's what I like to do.
Mm.
And then I've tried, I have various camouflage. I have like um, various netting, a blanket, camel blanket. I have like, little concealment techniques, but I actually find that um, what tends to work for me is just getting in place early and then letting the birds sort of see you and
Mm.
see that you're not a threat. I have when I have tried camouflage in the past, any movement, the slightest movement of the lens, the birds know you're there, and you can try to hide yourself as much as you want, and they know you're there. And there's always a bird that's able to give your location away, no matter
Mm.
how concealed you are. So unless you have like a pop-up blind that fully conceals you, and those I just find they don't work because you're never gonna leave one there long enough for the birds to get used to it.
Mm.
So unless you have a private reserve, that doesn't tend to work. So for me, I don't use too much camouflage, and I'll use what's like natural camouflage, where I'll if I'm approaching a subject and I don't want them to see my approach, I'll wait till they go out of view, and then I'll approach using like cover from just bushes and whatever's there, and get in position. And then when he comes back, I'm there, and that way I'm low to the ground. I'll do two things. If I have an area where I can lie flat, I'll lie flat on my stomach. Um,
Mm.
and if I have an area where I can't, where the shore or the bank is too steep or something like this, then I'll sit down and I'll put a bean bag and I'll flip out the LCD, the screen, and I'll make it just, screen mode only, so it won't switch back to the viewfinder. And then I'll track the subject that way, and just kind of swivel on the beanbag. It's pretty good if you have a subject that's not moving too much and you can track it. I think with like subjects that move really fast across the pond, I would love to have like a ground pod or something, and that's something I might get, or
Mm,
like a tripod that just is absolutely flat to the ground and has a tripod head on it. I think that would be a little easier for panning, to be honest. So I'm at the point where I'm starting to think about that, but for now, I just use the beanbag thing. It's really easy. It doesn't weigh much. I created my own bean bags. It's like a photography bag, and I added buckwheat shells and some rice to give it a little bit more stability.
I see.
Yeah, you can
Creative.
find all sorts of tips online, but that's the one I found. And I experimented a little bit. If it's all rice, if it's all like lentils, it's too heavy. If you
Right.
add the buckwheat shells, it's a little bit lighter and less dense, and so you don't get as tired. But you are trading stability. So actually, I have two bean bags. I have one that's like real light, and one that's like kind of a compromise, which is actually the one I use more. Um, but that's how I get it like right down to the ground. Get it like 2 inches off the ground with so it's a two-sided bean bag, and I can go a little higher, I can go a little lower, and it has like two flaps. And so if I want to go really low, I just use the one flap, lie it down like that, and then put the camera on it, and you can get like 2 inches off the ground that way.
Hmm. I wish people listen to this and understand how difficult bird photography is and to get those perfect shots. What all you
Yeah,
have
it's
to go through
surprisingly
to get.
difficult
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
and
it's
painful.
incredible, right? Because I'm sure we all have the same experience. You show them a good photograph, and almost everybody asks you if you're taking it with an iPhone.
Right.
Yeah,
Nope, the iPhone would not cut it right.
exactly.
Yeah, and it's a lot of yeah, it's pretty
But
thankless. It's a lot of time. Um,
yeah,
like you can spend an hour on a duck or 2 hours on a duck. And hey, maybe you get it, maybe you don't. Maybe he doesn't do a close pass. And I pretty much have like like different um threshold for what I consider close, good enough. And so I need it to come fairly close to even bother editing the image. And that often doesn't happen. You just sit there for 2 hours. And but what I would say is like I learn something every single time I go out and photograph birds. I've never gone out and not learned something about bird behavior, light, conditions, just something. So if you're paying attention the whole time to what the birds are doing, you're going to figure something out for next time. You
yep,
might identify a target or strategy or something, some behavior that you go, oh, I didn't know they did that. And so, yeah, that's what keeps me coming back is I'm not bored. I'm not just sitting there, twiddling my thumb. Yeah.
amazing. Yeah. All right. Any other questions, comments? All right, Chris, do you mind going out of the? There you go. So thank you very much again. I really appreciate you putting efforts and into this presentation and sharing with us. Like always, this is yeah, like Amanda also is saying thank you. Nice presentation. And please remember, right? I think this club, if I can say this, works because most of you give me feedback before and after presentations. I'm also soliciting input from others on speakers. This year has been a little difficult, I have to say, but I'm able to reach out. Next month, I'm also very excited. One of the youth photographers who won the award has agreed to present. So I'm going to, make sure I follow up with him and then send out an email soon. So for November, I think we are solid. Um, December onwards, again, please send me more, presenters and ideas that you have. If I don't have any, which I currently don't, then you end up with my presentation, which is, just kept as a reserve. So, and yes, Tega, thank you. Actually, I was going to reach out as well. I would love to have you present. So So we can chat offline after this. So really appreciate people giving me feedback and names. So please
Mhm.
send me suggestions. Okay, I have followed up with many suggestions that people have emailed me. Unfortunately, most of them declined for one reason or the other. Someone wants to get paid, and as you all know, we don't have an honorarium to give people. So unfortunately, we cannot encourage that. But other than that, happy to take any more suggestions. And with that, thank you all. Really appreciate it, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.
Thanks again.
Thanks, Sri.
Yep. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, talk to you later.